Welcome to Modern Day Bereans, a spiritual podcast.
We modern day Bereans.
Study the word and seek out the truth. Study to show myself approved. Pastor gotta show proof.
Modern day Bereans.
Many will come in the
Welcome
name.
back to Modern Day Bereans, episode number 7, The Lost Sabbath. I am your host, GthaMessenger. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give all the honor to Yah for his Yasomeness, and all praise be to Yahushua HaMashiach for being the mighty king who shall come back and redeem. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The Lost Sabbath, that's the topic for tonight. But before we get into all that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to mention how I am pro-Sabbath. I believe that there is a Sabbath that we are supposed to be following, but nobody knows how to calculate it properly yet. So I guess what I'm saying is nobody knows the biblical Sabbath, and what people practice today is not biblical, and I've come to the realization and understanding that unless you know how to properly calculate the Sabbath correctly, that we should not be trying to observe it. Now, don't try to call me a Pharisee and say, oh, he's getting all pharisaical with how he's trying to say we got to observe the Sabbath. Just, bear with me a little bit, because in a moment I'm going to bring out biblical verses that tell you, not in the exact way that I'm saying it, but it's in different words. It's saying what I am saying. You know what? Without further ado, let's not even delay this anymore. Let's just jump straight into this. We're going to go to Jubilees. We'll start Jubilees chapter 6, and we're going to read verses 30 through 38. And they read a little something like this. And all the days of the commandments will be 2 and 50 weeks of days. And these will make the entire year complete. Thus, it is engraven and ordained on the heavenly tablets. And there is no neglecting this commandment for a single year or from year to year. And command you, the children of Israel, that they obey the years according to this reckoning, 364 days, and these will constitute a complete year. And they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feast. But if they do neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order. And they will disturb the seasons, and the years will be dislodged. And they will neglect their ordinances. And all the children of Israel will forget and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. For I know, and from henceforth will I declare unto you, and it is not of my own devising, for the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained, lest they forget the feast of the covenant and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles, after their error and after their ignorance. For there will be those who will assuredly make observation of the moon, how it disrupts the seasons, and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day. And they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy, for they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. For this reason I command and testify to you, that you may testify to them. For after your death your children will disturb them, so that they will not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. That is Jubilees chapter 6, verses 30 through 38. Now, we're going to come back to this, ladies and gentlemen, because what we just read, it definitely conflicts with a seventh day Sabbath. It conflicts with just a regular lunar Sabbath. It conflicts with just a solar Sabbath. I think the only thing this does not conflict with is going to be a astro-loony solar way of telling time. But before we get into all that, because that's a whole nother area here that we could go into, I want to stick on topic for what we're doing in this opening. We're going to turn with me, if you would please, to Ezekiel chapter 20. And Ezekiel chapter 20, we're going to read a few more verses again, kind of like that first one, but this is just the opening up. So, you know what I mean? Don't worry about it. We're going to get more into this. Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 1 through 21, and it reads, "And it came to pass in the 7th year, in the 5th month, the 10th day of the month, that certain of the elders of Israel came to inquire of the Most High and sat before me. Then came the word of the Most High unto me, saying, Son of man, speak unto the elders of Israel, and say unto them, Thus saith the Most High, Yah, are you come to inquire of me? As I live, saith the Most High, Yah, I will not be inquired of by you. Will you judge them, son of man? Will you judge them? Cause them to know the abominations of their fathers, and say unto them, Thus saith the Most High, Yah, in the day when I chose Israel and lifted up my hand unto the seed of the house of Jacob, and made myself known unto them in the land of Egypt, when I lifted up my hand unto them, saying, I am the Most High your Yah. In the day that I lifted up my hand unto them to bring them forth of the land of Egypt into the land that I had espied for them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands. Then said I unto them, Cast you away every man the abominations of his eyes, and defile not yourself with the idols of Egypt. I am the Most High your Yah. But they rebelled against me, and would not hearken unto me. They did not every man cast away the abominations of their eyes, neither did they forsake the idols of Egypt. Then I said, I will pour out my fury upon them, to accomplish my anger against them in the midst of the land of Egypt. But I wrought for my name's sake, that it should not be polluted before the heathen, among whom they were, in whose sight I made myself known unto them, in bringing them forth out of the land of Egypt. Wherefore I caused them to go forth out of the land of Egypt, and brought them into the wilderness. And I gave them my statutes, and I showed them my judgments, which, if a man do, he shall live in them. Moreover also I gave them my Sabbaths, to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am the Most High that sanctifies them. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They walked not in my statutes, and they despised my judgments, which, if a man do, he shall even live in them. And my Sabbaths they greatly polluted. Then I said, I would pour out my fury upon them in the wilderness to consume them. But I wrought for my name's sake, that it should not be polluted before the heathen, in whose sight I brought them out. Yet also I lifted up my hand unto them in the wilderness, that I would not bring them into the land which I gave them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands. Because they despised my judgments, and walked not in my statutes, but polluted my Sabbaths. For their hearts went after their idols. Nevertheless, my eye spared them from destroying them, neither did I make an end of them in the wilderness. But I said unto the children in the wilderness, walk you not in the statutes of your fathers, neither observe their judgments, nor defile yourselves with their idols. I am the Most High, your Yah. Walk in my statutes and keep my judgments and do them, and hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am the Most High, your Yah. Notwithstanding, the children rebelled against me. They walked not in my statutes, neither accepted my judgments to do them, which if a man do, he shall live in them. They polluted my Sabbaths. Then I said I would pour out my fury upon them to accomplish my anger against them in the wilderness. Dang, ladies and gentlemen, that's the Most High going in right there. You know what I'm saying? That's the Most High straight up going in hardcore. I mean, let's keep going. I mean, that's thus saith the Most High, ladies and gentlemen, through the prophet Ezekiel, right? But let's see what else the scripture says, right? I got another one. This one, ladies and gentlemen, isn't going to be a bunch of verses. We're actually going to read 2 verses on these. We're going to go to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 9 and 10. And they read a little something like this. They say, the thing that has been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It has been already of old time, which was before us. Now, again, we saw in Jubilees chapter 6 that the author is talking to Noah, right? When you read the context of Jubilees 6, it's talking about Noah and the flood, right? And whoever this is speaking to Noah, it tells him about the children of Israel, right? They're saying the children of Israel will lose the ways of the Sabbath because they're going to go off in their calculations of how you calculate the Sabbath. They're not even going to have the correct feast days. They're not going to have anything correct because they won't be calculating things properly, right? That's what we read in Jubilees chapter 6. Now, when you go to Ezekiel chapter 20, we see that this is during the time. Oh, and also what I forgot to throw in there was it even, not only did it say, it told them about the children of Israel losing the way, but it also said that after his death, after Noah dies, that his own children were going to go off on the way they're supposed to be calculating the ways, and it would be lost, right? Now, then we went over to Ecclesiastes, and it said that there's nothing new under the sun, nothing. And is there anything that we could say this is new? No, I'm not even talking about a new topic here. This topic, the Lost Sabbath, or the 7-day Sabbath, or the Lunar Sabbath, or the Solar Sabbath, all these topics have been going around and circulating for ages now, for ages, right? So this is nothing new that we're bringing out here, ladies and gentlemen. So I just want to point that out. You know what I mean? And with that being said, you know, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5, trust in the Most High with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Dang. Lean not on your own understanding, right? Ecclesiasticus, right? Not Ecclesiastes. We're saying Ecclesiasticus this time. This is the book that was one of the books that was removed by the Protestant Church in 1611. In chapter 5, verse 15, it reads, be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or a small. So in this case, we're dealing with the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a very important day. It's the seventh day of creation in Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. The seventh day of creation. So that's going all the way back to the beginning, right? All the way back to the beginning, right? The Sabbath is a set apart holy day unto the Most High. You can find that in Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. That's part of the 10 commandments. It's the fourth commandment of the 10 commandments, right? The Sabbath is the sign that marks you and sets you apart. Exodus 31, verse 13. The Sabbath is also the seventh day in a 364-day year, and that we'll get into here in a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Supporting verses as we read about the Sabbath day, right? We just read Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 19 and 20. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12. And Jubilees chapter 6, verse 32. We did read Jubilees chapter 6, verse 32 already. And that already, what we already brought out there explained about the 364-day year. So if you was listening and you haven't forgot already, you would realize that. Yeah. So, now, like I said, I'm pro-Sabbath, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pro-Sabbath all the way, especially with verses in the Bible such as Luke chapter 13, verse 10, where it says, on a Sabbath, Yahushua was teaching in one of the, it says synagogue. It says synagogue, ladies and gentlemen, but I don't like to say synagogue. I'd rather say gathering. He was at the gathering. He was at the Sabbath gathering, right? He was at the holy convocation, Matthew chapter 12, verse 1, it says, at that time, Yahushua went on the Sabbath. Now, these verses make it clear that the Mashiach did keep a Sabbath. That's even what it said in Luke 13:10. It says, on a Sabbath. A Sabbath, ladies and gentlemen, a Sabbath, not the Sabbath. He went on a Sabbath, right? So, which Sabbath is that? Is it the one that aligns with the one written and ordained on the heavenly tablets? Or does this mean that the Sabbath is every Friday sundown to Saturday sundown? Or, let's just keep moving, right? Because I don't want to get ahead of myself. One could take this and say, see, look right there in the scriptures. You see, the Messiah kept the same Sabbath as the Pharisees in Matthew chapter 12. And history tells us it was Saturn's day when the Jews got together. However, I will show how they say the exact opposite as well, right? They will show how they were not getting together on every Saturn's day as the some of the historians like to put it, right? So again, I guess before we go though and start getting into all that, I want to get into a handful of verses real quick that will show us how we're supposed to be tracking the Sabbath, right? Because the Israelites have lost the way, like we read in Jubilees, or that they would lose the way. We read in all through Ezekiel chapter 20 that the Most High chose them, he lifted them up, he brought them out the land, he gave them and showed them the way, yet all through the wilderness, all they did was rebel and disobey what he told them to do, right? Now, what we're gonna dive into here now is it's gonna show us how we're supposed to track the time so we can figure out this Sabbath, right? Because this Sabbath, like I said in Exodus 31, verse 13, is what marks us, right? It's the sign between us that marks us and sets us apart, right? So the Sabbath is a very important thing. It's a real deal. It's the most realist thing, one of the most realist things in the scriptures, right? So let's keep moving. Let's go here to Genesis. You know what I mean? We're going to slide over to Genesis chapter 1. And in Genesis chapter 1, we're going to read verse 14, ladies and gentlemen. And it reads a little something like this. And Yah said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." Sounds pretty straightforward to me. You know, I mean, I don't see what all the confusion there is. It said that the lights in the firmament are going to be what we use to tell time, right? Let's slide over to Jubilees, right? I want to slide over to Jubilees, and we're going to read Jubilees chapter 2, and we're going to read verse 9. Jubilees chapter 2, verse 9, and it reads, "And Yah appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days, and for Sabbaths, and for months, and for feasts, and for years, and for Sabbaths of years, and for Jubilees, and for all seasons of the year." Again, that sounds pretty straightforward to me, ladies and gentlemen. The Most High is clearly saying that these lights in the firmament are going to be what's used to tell time. I mean, if I'm if I'm misinterpreting this, please put it in the comment and let me know. Brother G, you crazy, man. You're clearly misinterpreting this. I want to know what you think about it. You know what I'm saying? Don't just take my word for it. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, this is about peaceful, biblical dialogue, you know, midrashing and sharing the scriptures and iron sharpening iron. So, you know, let's keep this moving though. Psalms 104 verse 19. He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knows his going down. Again, this is the Most High continually showing us that the sun, the moon, and the stars are ways of tracking time. Let's see what the prophet Jeremiah has to say, right? We've already gotten the word from Ezekiel. You know what I mean? We've gotten the word out of the Torah in Genesis, right? We've gotten the word out of the Torah in Exodus, right? We've heard from King David, right? We've heard from whoever it is talking to Noah, right? We've heard of all these people telling us what it is. Now let's see what Jeremiah has to say. Jeremiah 31. And we're going to read verses 35 and 36. And they read, "Thus saith the Most High, which gives the sun for the light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divide the sea when the waves thereof roar. The Most High of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, says the Most High, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever." Dang, ladies and gentlemen, when you look at what that just said, the Most High is just not playing, boy. He is clearly telling you, look, if the sun and the moon and the stars don't follow the commandments that I gave them, which is to operate in their annual cycles, to bring in the seasons, that bring in the feasts, that bring in the Sabbath days, right? If these things don't operate the way I created them to do so, then Israel will no longer be a nation before me. Wow. Wow. So the way of tracking time is the lights in the firmament, which are the sun, the moon, and the stars. And when you look at Genesis chapter 1:14 and Jubilees 2, you can clearly see, ladies and gentlemen, they're saying the exact same thing. The exact same thing. Now, I want to take you guys over to 1 Samuel, and we're gonna jump into chapter 20. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I want to take us over to 1 Samuel. I want to take us over to 1 Samuel. That is 1 Samuel, ladies and gentlemen, chapter 20. I'll give you a second. Okay. 1 Samuel chapter 20, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start with verse 5, and it reads like this. It says, okay, let me make it clear what I'm about to do here. Because, let's just read this. Let's read this. 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5. And David said unto Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even. If your father, that's right. We're going to stop there, because my point here is that King David, he's not the king yet. I think he's been anointed already, but don't mark my words on that. I could be wrong. But King David's not the king yet, right? King Saul is still sitting on the throne. And King David says to the son of King Saul, because this is his homie, this is his best friend, his partner, his boy, right? He says to Jonathan, tomorrow's the new moon. What? The new moon. He's using the moon here as an indicator, right? To say that I'm going to start at the new moon and I'm going to go hide myself for 3 days, right? For 3 days, I'm going to hide myself in the field until even, right? So, I mean, he's using the moon here as an indicator. Let's slide down to verses 24 through 27. And it reads, it says, So David hid himself in the field, just like he said, when the new moon was come. There's that starting point. The king sat him down to eat meat. And the king sat upon his seat as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought, something has befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the 2nd day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, Wherefore come not the son of Jesse to meat, neither yesterday nor today? What are we catching here, ladies and gentlemen? What are we noticing? Verse 27, it's saying it right there. Verse 24, it says, David hid himself when the new moon came. So he did what he told Jonathan he was going to do in verse 5, right? He's in the field hiding. Saul is now saying in verse 27, he's like, look, dude, this is now the 2nd day of the month. So that means that starting point, that beginning indicator, the new moon, right? New moon day was the 1st day of the month, right? David wasn't there. The 2nd day is the morrow after, right? Obviously, and David's still not there. Point I'm making is they're using the moon, ladies and gentlemen, just like it said in Genesis chapter 1. The lights in the firmament are how you determine days and years. These are both what we would call instruments or time periods that are used to track time. So, I guess what we can, well, you know what? Let's do another one. I want to go over to Psalms 81. If you would, please turn with me to Psalms chapter 81. And we're going to read verse 3. Psalms 81, verse 3, and it reads, "Blow the trumpet in the new moon, in the appointed time, on our solemn feast day." If we go over to Leviticus chapter 23, which is another book in the law that tells you about the feast days, right? We can slide down to verse 23, and it reads a little something like this. "And the Most High spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month, shall you have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing trumpets, a holy convocation." You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? That's the Most High saying on the 1st day of the month, right? Which we saw in the verse before, which we saw in the book prior to Psalms 81, that we're supposed to blow the trumpet in the new moon in the appointed time on our solemn feast day. It is a feast day on the seventh month. That particular month happens to actually be one of the 7 feasts of the Most High Yah, the Feast of Trumpets. Now, all of these verses indicate that the moon, the sun, the moon, and the stars played significant roles in tracking time, ladies and gentlemen. So, what we've established to this point so far is that there is a 7th-day Sabbath. Yes, there is a 7th-day Sabbath. It is according to the heavenly luminaries. Better yet, let me rephrase that. The heavenly luminaries is how you track it accordingly. There you go. That makes a lot more sense. The heavenly luminaries is how you track it accordingly. And we have showed that the Messiah even kept a Sabbath, right? We showed that he kept a Sabbath. Right? Now, let's hear what some of the scholars were saying, right? Because like I said, I know some will say, there's all these historians that say the Sabbath was Saturday or Saturn's day, and we can go to this historian and we can go to that historian and we'll see that, the Jews were worshiping on Saturday, aka what's known back then as Saturn's day, right? But at that time, Saturn's day would be the 7th day of the week, but it would not be the last day, right? According to the way they say, according to the Gregorian Calendar today, Saturday is the last day of the week, and Sunday is the first day, right? But back in the Mashiach's time, it wasn't like that, But again, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, Let's just look into this. Like, let's see, the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia on page 410 under holidays says this: "The new moon is still, and the Sabbath originally was dependent upon the lunar cycle." Page 631 under calendar says, "The months of the year were lunar and began with the new month." Now, me personally, if I just had that one quote right there, I'd be scratching my head because, you know, that's coming from the SOS. But let's see what some of the other scholars say, right? According to Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary 1986 edition, under month, the month was a unit of time closely tied to the moon. The Hebrew word for month also meant moon, Kodesh. The reason for the connection between the month and the moon is that the beginning of a month was marked by a new moon. The moon was carefully observed by the people of Bible times. Now, see, I didn't just say that. I didn't make that up. We got the SOS talking about, you know, the Sabbath was originally dependent on the moon. We got Christian scholars here saying that the moon, that the people of the Bible times observed the moon. Let's see what the Zondervan Bible Dictionary says, right? This is some more Christian scholarship, biblical scholarship. So let's see what it says. When you look up month in the Zondervan's Bible Dictionary, it tells you to look up calendar and time, right? So this is what it says. Under calendar, it says during the biblical period time was reckoned, this words was moving on. Calendar. During the biblical period, time was reckoned solely on astronomical observation. Days, months, and years were determined by the sun and moon. When you look up the word time, it reads, in biblical period, time was marked by sunrise and sunset, phases of the moon, and location of a few constellations. So what we've got here, ladies and gentlemen, are biblical scholars and rabbinical scholars saying the same thing as Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. You know, and again, I was telling you a second ago, I didn't want to get ahead of myself, but, you know, I'm just going to say it. We got to keep in mind, during the time of Mashiach, the Roman Greco way of telling time was the Julian calendar, and it consisted of 8-day weeks. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put a link. I'll put a link in the description box for you, so that way you can take a look at this. It'll be a link to a photo of the Julian calendar, right? And when you go to this calendar, if you take a look at it, you'll see clear as day, ladies and gentlemen. This calendar here, the days are not marked as days or numbers, they're lettered, right? They are lettered. And at first glance, you notice this, right? You can see that they're lettered, right? The first day of the week is labeled A. Day 7 is labeled G. This shows that a Roman Catholic or a Christian week did not end with Saturday, like I had just mentioned a little bit ago, right? It didn't end with what they were called Saturn's Day, right? So it ended with what was labeled as G, right? And excuse me. I'm off here. If you look at this, you see that the 7th day is labeled as G, right? And it doesn't end with G. The week ends with what you see as labeled H, right? I bring all this out to highlight how verses like Luke 24 verse 1, which reads, now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the woman came to the tomb, bringing the spices they had prepared. Now, when you look at this verse, Luke 24 verse 1, excuse me, I got a little sidetracked there. when you look at this verse here on Luke 24, verse 1, you can clearly see here that the very first day is not the same day, and it could not have been the same first day of the week as the Christians, right? We can see this clear as day, ladies and gentlemen. The Julian calendar in the times of the Mashiach was an 8-day week. So that means, according to the Christians, right, they were not keeping the 7-day Sabbath, right? They were not walking and doing things correctly. So, I mean, without me going into a whole nother thing on getting onto that, because, you know, I could get into a whole bunch of things on the Christian church and what they did, right? But, you know, I want to just stick on point here and showing how the Sabbath was lost, right? Now, what I've noticed, right, because we've established the Sabbath, we've established there's a 7th-day Sabbath, we've established that the Sabbath is supposed to be, it should be tracked according to the Genesis chapter 1:14, the lights in the firmament, right? We've established all that. And what we're establishing now is what we're going to establish now is all the confusion, right? All the confusion that is going on all through the nations, all through Israel. We could just keep it with Israel and talk about all the confusion, but we're going to also show how all the other nations are just so confused as well, right? Ephesians chapter 4, verses 4 through 6 says, "There is one body, one spirit, even as you are called in one hope of your calling, one master, one faith, one baptism." One faith, ladies and gentlemen, one faith, and that faith is based on Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, when it comes to tracking the Sabbath. Because that's what it said. I didn't say that. I didn't write the book. I read the book. Again, if you think I'm misinterpreting it, write it in the comment section. Hopefully soon, we'll be going video live soon, and we'll be able to take some live calls. So, you know, keep us in prayer, keep us in mind that we can make this pop off sooner than later. You know what I mean? But until then, write your questions in the comment. If you think I'm misinterpreting it, tell me in the comment section so we can talk about it. You know what I'm saying? I'll be respectful, straight up. I'll be respectful. So let's get it. Now, again, we're going to bring out the confusion, and we're going to highlight the massive confusion that's around the Sabbath. It surrounds it. I mean, it literally engulfs the Sabbath, because this is one of the biggest ways people are deceived. I truly, truly believe this. Now, the three biggest religions all derive from the same book, yet none of them agree on the same Sabbath day. You got Judaism, and their Sabbath is from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, right? Or what some would call 7-day Sabbath keepers, things like that, right? Christianity, they changed the Sabbath. They changed the SOS Sabbath to Sunday. They was like, and they flat out admitted too. The Catholic Church flat out admits that they changed it from the day that the SOS does it, right? For those who don't know what the SOS is, that's the Synagogue of Satan. Check out episode number 6. That'll fill you in with some information there. You know what I mean? In Islam's worship day is Friday, right? So, again, these are the three major religions of the world. They don't agree on a Sabbath day, and all their beliefs come from the same belief, right? One faith, one body, one faith, one spirit, Yet you got all these, Christianity's got about 40,000 different denominations. And I might be exaggerating that, but I can guarantee you I read an article for a fact where it said that there was 30,000. There was at least a minimum of 30,000 different denominations of Christianity, and they all swear up and down that they have the correct way, and they all fight amongst each other, and they get into these quarrels with each other, and they have all this folly with each other, right? Where they get into these vain disputes with one another, right? Over things like I don't even know what the Christians be arguing about. Man, I've been out of there for so long. But for real, you know what I mean? Like 30,000 different denominations. Come on, people. That's clear confusion. That's the definition of confusion. I don't know how anyone could not recognize how confused Christians are, and I mean, bro, come on, to my Christian brethren, no disrespect, much love to you. May Yah be with you. And I pray that you come out of that, man, because let's keep it moving. Let's not get sidetracked and jump into something else. You know what I mean? Christianity's got all these denominations. In Judaism, right? In Judaism, which is not the way of the Bible, by the way. Judaism itself is the worship, the practice of the Talmud, right? You got the practice of the Talmud, you got the practice of the Mishnah, the oral Torah, the Kabbalah. You got all these other documents that are circulating all through Judaism, right? And they'll tell you themselves that they'll address every other book before they get to the Torah. And if they're still stumped and can't figure out what they need to, then they'll address the 5 books of Moses, right? So, that's a whole bunch of other nonsense that's not scriptural, that doesn't line up with the Bible, right? You got lunar Sabbaths, right? And again, this isn't to say that this is incorrect, because obviously Genesis chapter 1 tells us to use the lights in the firmament. So it's not that a lunar Sabbath is right, but it's not wrong either. It's beginning to take a step forward to learning how to properly calculate the time according to the Most High, right? You also have, and the lunar Sabbath, the reason why the lunar Sabbath is not correct, although it's a step forward in the right direction, right? The lunar Sabbath primarily focuses on the phases of the moon, and it leaves out everything else, right? As we read in Jubilees chapter 6, I believe it was like verse 36 or 37, where it said that there will be those who make observation of the moon, how it comes in 10 days too soon, right? So you got to understand that you can't just use the moon, right? Then you have the loony solar Sabbath, right? Which I'm not sure how that one works fully, but that Sabbath is based on the moon and the sun. So again, I would have to say that if we're keeping the loony solar Sabbath, based on how you do that, I'm not exactly sure. I would have to say now you've taken 2 steps in the right direction, right? And then you also have the astro-loony solar, which again, do I have all the answers on how to use this way of tracking time? No, I don't have them all yet, right? But we are studying. You got to study to show yourself approved, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing. We are supposed to be studying to show ourselves approved. And through our studies, we gain knowledge, right? Through his precepts, we gain knowledge and understanding. So therefore, we have to continue on. So, and that astro-loony solar Sabbath, ladies and gentlemen, that is the one that I would have to say would be the correct way, which uses the sun, the moon, and the stars for tracking time and understanding when the Sabbaths, the feast days, the Jubilees, and all these other feasts that the Bible talks about, right? So why are there so many ways of keeping the Sabbath when we read in Ephesians chapter 4 that there's only one faith? Right? I've already highlighted right now more than a handful, more than a half a dozen ways to observe the Sabbath. Come on now, ladies and gentlemen, seriously? And you're gonna tell me that we know when the Sabbath is? We have, just in Judaism alone, you got about 4 to 5 different ways of keeping the Sabbath, right? When we get into Israel, real true Israel, when you talk about the true Israelites, it's no different. There's no difference, ladies and gentlemen. We got sun up to sun up Sabbath keepers, sundown to sundown Sabbath keepers. We have lunar solar Sabbath keepers, astro-loony solar Sabbath keepers. We got people who start their year on the spring equinox, which I think that's correct, but I don't know 100% right now. But we got people who start their year on the spring equinox, and then they say it's a specific day, and then come to find out they're changing the day that it starts, right? So, there's a lot of questions still that are going to be left at hand, right? That I don't have the answers to at this moment, but you can trust and believe that I will continue the search, and through the, revelation of the Spirit of the Most High, the Ruach HaKodesh, hopefully we'll get to that point. You know what I mean? Let's keep this moving though. You know what I mean? So all this confusion is what we're talking about. I wanna talk about this real quick about unclean days, right? Because I said earlier, I talked about unclean days and clean days, and I mentioned the way it came to be was I mentioned that the Sabbath, if you don't know how to calculate the Sabbath, then you should not try to observe the Sabbath because you profane it, right? When we go back to Jubilees chapter 6, ladies and gentlemen, we can go back and look at that, and we can really kind of just dive into this and dissect this right quick, and you'll see what I'm talking about here, ladies and gentlemen. It says, for this reason, Jubilees chapter 6, verse 37 said, "For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony," the Sabbath, right? They will make, let me see, where was I? Abominable day, the day of testimony, and an unclean day, a feast day. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks exactly what I'm saying here. This isn't about being all pharisaical and trying to, oh my gosh, no, look at here, we're gonna say that, we're being like the Pharisees because these guys are saying, if you don't know how to keep the Sabbath, then you shouldn't keep it. And God knows my heart, and he knows what I feel inside, and he knows that my heart desires to keep his Sabbath. But yet right here, it's saying that if you keep the Sabbath, that's not according to the way that he said to do it, which a couple verses prior to it said a year is 364 days, and we've been running on 365-day years since, what was it? When did the Gregorian calendar come into play? It was the Gregorian calendar. Well, let's just see here. I got a link here, and I'll put the link in the description box. It says, according to Wikipedia, the Gregorian calendar is the calendar used in most of the world. It was introduced in October 1582 by Pope Gregory the 13th as a minor modification to the Julian calendar, reducing the average year from 365.25 days to 365.2425 days, and adjusting for the drift in the tropical or solar year that the inaccuracy had caused during the intervening centuries. So, again, this is saying that our year, the Gregorian calendar that's still used till this day, from 1582 till now, present day, is 365 days. We read in Jubilees chapter 6 that the year is 364 days. We also can find supporting verses to the years being 364 days in Jubilees. If you go to Jubilees chapter 6, you read we read it, I believe it was like 32 verse 33. You know, you can go over to Enoch in the book of Enoch chapter 74 verses 11 through 13 and chapter 75 verses 1 through 4. They both testify to a 365 day year, and it goes into an in-depth explanation on how the luminaries work. I just don't want to speak on it yet because I'm still studying all that, and I can't tell you how it works perfectly yet. So, you know, these you see now why I say that the biblical Sabbath has been lost. You know, books that have been removed from the Bible are telling us that we've barely. Let me say this. Books that have been removed from the Bible are all telling us that we've barely scratched the surface with all this stuff that I'm bringing out, right? And if you do a quick math breakdown, right? And you can literally do this on your phone right now. You can do this right now on your phone. Take out your smartphone, type in 365 days divided by 52 weeks, because that's what we read in Jubilees, right? We read in Jubilees that the year would be 2 and 50 weeks is what it said. So that's 52 weeks, right? Now we know that our year is based on a solar cycle, right? And it's 365 days long. So do the math. When you do the math and you divide 365 by 52, you get 7.01923. Now, clear your calculator and type in 364 divided by 52. And what number do you get? You get 7 exactly, ladies and gentlemen. You get 7 exactly. That 7-day Sabbath, that 7th-day Sabbath that the Most High spoke about when calculating it according to the length of days in a year that he said in the book, 364, you can divide evenly. Well, I won't say evenly because it's not an even number, but you can divide 364 by 52 and get 7 exactly. And we just read in Wikipedia that the Gregorian calendar made slight modifications, but it was still off. It's still off, ladies and gentlemen. Still off. According to History.com, in an article titled 6 Things You May Not Know About the Gregorian Calendar, it says that the Gregorian calendar is off by 26 seconds and that by 4909, the Gregorian calendar will be 1 full day ahead of the solar year. I will leave the link in the description box to that article so you can read it for yourself. Now, Hey folks, we have been at this for quite some time. I can keep going on, and I actually have so much more to keep going over. But at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna call this, and I guess we might even just have to call this the Lost Sabbath Part 1, right? Because I still got so much information, and you know what? I may even bring somebody onto the show that we can, get into looking at this from the perspective of maybe the 7-day Sabbath, from the Lunar Sabbath. We may have to have a few people in here where we could start talking about this Sabbath. So it's not just, my perspective and all that, even though, I think your boy is on point with what I'm bringing out, but it is what it is. But like I said, I want to thank you guys as always for hanging out with your boy. If you liked what you heard, make sure you like, subscribe, click the bell so you can get notifications on the new episodes when they drop. Leave me some comments in the comment section. Let me know what you thought, whether good or bad. Let me know your questions, any topics you want me, any future topics you want me to go over. And yeah, man, and like I said, thank you guys again as always for lending me your ear. Until the next time, I am your host, GthaMessenger, and this has been yet another episode of Modern Day Bereans, a spiritual podcast.
We modern day Bereans.
Study the word and seek out the truth. Study to show myself approved. Pastor gotta show proof.
Modern day Bereans.
Many will come in the name. This is the one given by the king. I ain't afraid, man, state your claim. Cause we modern day Bereans. We gon' lift it up in prayer. We gon' take it back to the book. We gon' test every word. Truth or lie, man, why? Cause we are modern day Bereans. Don't trust what the church say. Been lying since my childhood days. Most of what they say ain't written on the page. We are modern day Bereans.